a video where we cover all 32 teams in the NFL going into this week. We'll be discussing team by team based off of my power rankings, and here are my power rankings going into week 3 of the 2025 season. We're going to start with number 32, the New Orleans Saints, and then finish the video with the number 1 team, the Philadelphia Eagles. At any time, feel free to use the timestamps in this video to skip around to each team. And before we start with the first team, the New Orleans Saints, let's look at the matchups for week 3. Starting with Thursday Night Football, the Miami Dolphins versus the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, they look great, no question about it. The Dolphins, on the other hand, they are 0-2. They need the spark to happen in order to get the first victory. Over to Sunday's slate of games, the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Minnesota Vikings. No Joe Burrow versus J.J. McCarthy. Jake Browning versus Carson Wentz. The Houston Texans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. AFC South battle. The Jaguars, offensively, they need a spark to happen based off that performance that they had last week. The Houston Texans, offensively, they need a spark to happen based off the last 2 weeks. What a surprise the Indianapolis Colts have been. They started the season at 2-0. However, for the Titans, they're 0-2. Cam Ward still looking for his first victory. The next matchup, the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Washington Commanders. The Commanders may be without Jaden Daniels because of a knee sprain. We'll talk about that when we talk about them. But for the Raiders, they did not have a good showing last week against the Chargers. Let's see if they can turn it around and take advantage of Jaden Daniels potentially missing this game. The Rams versus the Eagles, a rematch of the divisional round of the playoffs. And in my power rankings, it's a battle of 2 top 8 teams. The Rams at 7, the Eagles, number 1 team. NFC South between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers almost made that comeback. Ultimately, they fell to the Arizona Cardinals. For the Falcons, their defense looks amazing this season, so they could cause a lot of havoc for Bryce Young and that struggling offense. Pittsburgh Steelers versus the New England Patriots. Drake May, he seems like he's the franchise quarterback. Looked great in that victory against the Dolphins last week. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, after a good showing in Week 1 against the Jets in that revenge game for Rodgers, did not look good against the Seahawks. The Green Bay Packers versus the Cleveland Browns, 2 very good defenses. Believe it or not, we know about the Green Bay Packers defense, but the Browns defense can hold on for their own. But for the Packers, they seem like a top 4 team in our power rankings. The Jets versus the Buccaneers, 0-2 versus 2-0. The Bucs, Baker Mayfield, comeback victory led by Bucky Irving and Rachaad White on top of that. For the Jets, Justin Fields is in concussion protocol. He may be missing this matchup. The Denver Broncos versus the Los Angeles Chargers, a division matchup between Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh. The Chargers, they look great defensively. Offensively, we know that Justin Herbert can get it done. For the Broncos, even though they are 1-1, they don't seem like they're meeting the preseason expectations that a lot of people had for them. But let's see if they can have a good showing against the Chargers. The Saints versus the Seahawks. The Seahawks are led by their running attack, also a very tough defense. For the Saints, Spencer Rattler does not look terrible, but they need to turn it around to the 32nd ranked team in our power rankings. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Chicago Bears. Both of these defenses are struggling, so don't be surprised if this turns out to be a shootout in Chicago. The Arizona Cardinals versus the San Francisco 49ers, both 2-0. However, for the Cardinals, they almost gave up a victory, not just last week to the Carolina Panthers, but almost allowed the Saints to come back in week 1. Can they just hold off the 49ers that is going to be led potentially by Mac Jones if Brock Purdy is not healthy? The 0-2 Chiefs versus the 0-2 Giants. Now, both of these teams are surprising in their own ways. For the Chiefs, we did not expect them to go 0-2 to start the season, but for the Giants, even though they are 0-2 and people didn't have high expectations, what's surprising is that their offense actually looks great with Russell Wilson. And then finally, Monday Night Football between the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. The Lions came back to life last week in that 52-21 victory over the Chicago Bears. The Baltimore Ravens, they also came back to life. They had a 1-point loss to the Bills, so that's not terrible. But in week 2, dominating victory over the Cleveland Browns. Let's start with the coverage of all 32 teams, starting with the New Orleans Saints. A quick news update for the Saints. Rookie defensive tackle Vernon Broughton is expected to miss the season because of a hip injury. Surgery is still on the table, debating that, whether he should get surgery or not. But regardless, a hip injury will sideline him for 2025. I hate to use the term the eye test, but Spencer Rattler actually hasn't looked that bad. I mean, the stats may not blow you out of the water, but just from watching him play, he gets the ball into his playmaker's hands. He can get the ball downfield. Now, if the Saints continue to lose, yes, Tyler Shuck, who they invested a second-round draft capital in, will become the starter eventually. But I don't believe that Spencer Rattler will be benched necessarily because of the lack of production. It may be because of the lack of winning games. But he's turned Juwan Johnson into one of his favorite targets, 20 targets, 13 receptions, 125 yards. And then it's just a matter of time before Chris Olave turns those targets into production. To the Cleveland Browns, Quinshon Judkins will be the starting running back for the Browns moving forward. Last week against the Ravens, he played about 27% of offensive snaps. That was 19 snaps in total. 13 of those 19 snaps, he had a touch. 10 carries, 3 receptions. To put that in perspective, Dylan Sampson, who played about 23% of snaps, so right in line with Judkins, only got 7 touches. Now, he did have a touchdown, so he should be the third down passing back. But between the tackles, first and second down, short yardage situations, it should be Judkins. To the Tennessee Titans, Alec Ayamanor has officially emerged as that wide receiver 2. He's been the wide receiver 2 for the last couple of weeks for the Titans. He's averaging about 7 targets a game, 3 receptions, 34 yards per game, so that doesn't blow you out of the water. However, this Titans passing game is ranked 32nd in the NFL, dead last. So the only direction that they can go is up. As Cam Ward continues to improve, this passing game sees a little bit more production. Alec Ayamanor will see a big production in his game as well. To the 29th ranked team, the Carolina Panthers. This offensive line is going through it. Robert Hunt, torn biceps. Austin Corbett, torn MCL. To replace them, Corbett, it's going to be Cade Mays. And then to replace Hunt is going to be my guy, really good guy, Chandler Zavala, in place of Robert Hunt. I know the jury is still out there for some, and people have already shut the door on Bryce Young and this Carolina offense. I still believe that they can be good in certain situations. For instance, what we saw in garbage time, I know that they had to pass the ball a lot. However, when you're facing a top 5 pass rushing team in the Atlanta Falcons, with 2 starting offensive linemen gone for a significant amount of time, this is going to spell trouble for the Carolina offense. And on to the New York Giants. This Giants offense is clicking with Russell Wilson. 618 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception so far in 2 games. Wan'Dale Robinson is finally catching passes past the line of scrimmage. I obviously say that jokingly, but it's nice to have him outside of just a screen guy or short yardage situations and use him in the intermediate to deep phases of the passing game. Even though the Giants are 0-2, this is what they envisioned with their offense. They are in no rush. They have made it clear since the preseason. They are in no rush to put Jackson Dart in as the starting quarterback. And on to the Chicago Bears. This Bears defense does not look the greatest, especially in the secondary. They got some unfortunate news with Jalen Johnson, their cornerback. Starting cornerback is going to be sidelined indefinitely with a groin injury. He suffered a groin injury in preseason and training camp. He was kind of dealing with it, but he re-aggravated it against the Detroit Lions, so he's going to be sidelined for some time. Tyreek Stevenson, he's going to be stepping up as that number 1 corner, but as we saw last week against the Detroit Lions, he was lined up a couple of times against Amon-Ra St. Brown, gave up a touchdown, did not have the best performance. So the Bears defense, it's going to be a while before we see some good production out of them. To the Miami Dolphins, who are 0-2, season hasn't gone their way. Naturally, all the blame does fall on the quarterback, just the nature of the game. I will give him the benefit of the doubt, Tagovailoa, and say that he has improved compared to week 1. However, the leading receiver on this team, it is Devon Achane in terms of receptions and receiving touchdowns. 11 receptions for him on the season. Maybe this is just how the offense is designed. Get the ball in Achane's hands behind the line of scrimmage, let him do his thing with yards after catch. I would put the blame more so on the defense than the offense. They are ranked 24th so far in pass defense, 25th in run defense. They give up the 4th most net yards per pass attempt, 8.4 yards per attempt. They are tied dead last with the Carolina Panthers in quarterback hits, with only 5 on the season. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the Dolphins defense is going to be turning around anytime soon. Over to the New York Jets, Justin Fields is in concussion protocol, and hardly does a player pass the protocol in 7 days. Tyrod Taylor is probably going to be starting for the Jets. This does hurt Aaron Glenn's game plan as a run-first team with Braylon Allen, Breece Hall, and Justin Fields. You lose 1 less player. However, for Tyrod Taylor, in his defense, he's mobile as well. In fact, his nickname is T-Mobile. But he's obviously 36 years old, so he's not going to be as efficient as a runner as Justin Fields. However, he will be efficient as a passer because dating back to 2022, he has thrown 220 passes since then, and he's completed 66% of those passes. Over to the Houston Texans. Nick Chubb did score that 25-yard touchdown run against the Buccaneers. However, overall, the run game, it's inefficient. Some would even argue that the Buccaneers let the Texans score on purpose so that they could get the ball back. But that run game is a big reason why this Texans offense is inefficient. Like, you can blame that O-line, which hasn't been playing great, obviously. You could blame C.J. Stroud for not throwing it to Nico Collins as many times as everybody hoped for. But ultimately, if you lack a threatening run game, that makes it much easier for defenses to scheme. The number 23, the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, another sputtering offense. There's really not much else on that Chiefs offense besides Patrick Mahomes. I know Travis Kelce is there, still a really good player given his age, but they have a certain game plan for him, and he's not playing every single down like he was back in the day. Rashee Rice is still suspended. They don't have a true number 1 receiver. I know that Tyquan Thornton can be that deep threat. Hollywood Brown, gets targeted a lot, but he's utilized in maybe a short yardage, Wan'Dale Robinson-esque type of role. Rice is suspended for 4 more games, and in those games, they play the Lions and the Ravens. So it's a possibility that the Chiefs could potentially start 2-4 by the time Rashee Rice returns. The next team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Brian Thomas Jr. is making some headlines, obviously, because of his performance from last week against the Bengals. Some people are saying that he's shying away from contact, according to Liam Cohen, that he's dealing with a wrist injury, so maybe that limited him. Dating back to last year with Trevor Lawrence, he's averaging 4 receptions and 66 yards per game. With Mac Jones, 7 receptions and 86 yards per game. So is there a lack of chemistry with Trevor Lawrence? Potentially, but with everyone saying that he's shying away from contact, whether that's true or not true, I believe that BTJ might be taking that personally, and as talented of a player as he is, and how important of a player he is to the Jaguars, he should be turning it around moving forward. Nothing to worry about for Jaguars fans. Moving on to the next team, the New England Patriots. They looked great, 32-27 victory over the Miami Dolphins. That 56-yard catch to Ramondre Stevenson by Drake May was actually designed for Travion Henderson. I thought this was interesting. Mike Vrabel said that they practiced a similar play with Travion Henderson. For Patriots fans, I know that they wanted to see Henderson a little bit more involved in this offense. He's averaging 34% of offensive snaps. That's 8 touches per game. Ramondre Stevenson, 11 carries, 54 yards, 4.9 yards per carry, 5 catches, 85 yards. That kind of production means that Stevenson should be incorporated in the game plan, absolutely. But Henderson also is way more talented to average just 8 touches per game. There is a world and a possibility for a Patriots team that doesn't have a true number 1 receiver where Henderson and Stevenson can coexist and get a lot of snaps. Maybe Henderson can increase from 8 touches to about 12 to 14 touches a game moving forward. As we crack into the top 20, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. Ashton Jeanty, there's a lot of concern about his production because in week 1, he had 19 carries, but only 38 yards. Did have a touchdown, but in week 2, 11 carries for 43 yards. So the production was a little bit better as far as yards per carry. However, he only played on 56% of offensive snaps in week 2 versus 89% in week 1. Not entirely sure what that dip in production was, but Brock Bowers, Ashton Jeanty, and Jacoby Myers should be the 3 main focal points of that Raiders offense. Everything does come back to that offensive line. In the last 2 games, they haven't had the best performances, so that is going to hurt Ashton Jeanty a bit. But let's get him a little bit more touches, see if he can turn it around moving forward. For the Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy has a sprained ankle. He's going to be missing 2 to 4 weeks. Carson Wentz is in line to start. He was a late signing by the Vikings after they traded away Sam Howell to the Philadelphia Eagles. Last year, in 1 game with the Kansas City Chiefs, he completed 10 out of 17 passes for only 98 yards. However, the year before that, he was 17-24, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception in 1 game for the Los Angeles Rams. And then with the Washington Commanders in 2022, he started a few games. He averaged 241 yards per game, 1.7 touchdowns, 1 interception per game. It's not out of the realm of possibility, being a veteran, that he does play better than J.J. McCarthy has the last couple of weeks. To make things clear, there's no quarterback controversy. J.J. McCarthy is obviously the starter, but can Carson Wentz go down that same route that Sam Darnold did last season? Other news for the Minnesota Vikings, their center Ryan Kelly and Justin Skule, their left tackle, are under concussion protocol. More than likely, they're going to be missing this game. Now, Christian Darrisaw should be coming back. Skule was the backup for Darrisaw, was filling in his absence, but Michael Juergens is in line to start at center. And then Aaron Jones, unfortunately, is going to be missing the next 4 weeks. He has been placed on injured reserve because of a hamstring injury. It seems like hamstring is an issue for Aaron Jones throughout his entire career. Jordan Mason, that they have highly raved about, will be filling in as that starting running back. The Pittsburgh Steelers, focusing in on that running back room. Jaylen Warren is a nice surprise, averaging 97 yards per game and about 15 touches or so per game as well. I know a lot of people had high expectations for Caleb Johnson, but seems like he's a depth piece. And then that fumble on special teams against the Seattle Seahawks. Doesn't seem like that Jaylen Warren will be seizing any of his workload to Johnson anytime soon. Some injury news for them. Alex Highsmith, their starting linebacker, dealing with a high ankle sprain. Unfortunately, he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. The Atlanta Falcons defense looks incredible. 4th in quarterback pressure rate, 46%. 4th in sack rate, 10.4%. And they're 3rd in the NFL in sacks. Those 2 additions with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. in the first round helped out a lot. They made the presence known against the Minnesota Vikings, but Jeff Ulbrich, their defensive coordinator, is doing a lot with the players that they already have. Zach Harrison, their defensive end from Ohio State that they drafted in the 3rd round a couple years ago, he's taken on a bigger role. Rook Orororo has had his ups and downs, but just like Harrison, He's taken on a bigger role and has helped that Falcons defense. Brandon Dorlus has stepped up. Caden Ellis seems like he's a little bit more versatile this year. A.J. Terrell's injury, hamstring injury, is a big hit, but they are emerging as one of the best defenses in the league when they're healthy. For the Denver Broncos, Troy Franklin seems like he's emerged as that wide receiver 2 ahead of Marvin Mims. The chemistry is there with Bo Nix. They played in college together, and then last week against the Colts, 8 receptions out of 9 targets, 89 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Also, interesting thing to note, 83% of the time on offense, Troy Franklin was on the field. 79% of the time, Courtland Sutton was on the field. 9 targets for Franklin, 4 targets for Sutton. Now, this could just be the unpredictable Sean Payton with a game plan in mind. I still believe that Sutton is the wide receiver 1 in that offense. However, this could be the start of something great, and Franklin could be a featured piece in 2025. The Dallas Cowboys are signing Jadeveon Clowney to a 1-year, $6 million deal. They have a bottom 3 pass defense, a bottom 10 run defense. They are ranked 21st in quarterback hits. The loss of Micah Parsons is greatly felt. This defense is not looking the best. Jadeveon Clowney comes in as a good depth piece, potential starter. He's going to be rotating in and out with Sam Williams. Their center, Cooper Beebe, is set to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Brock Hoffman is going to be filling in at center. For the Seattle Seahawks, it's truly a 1A, 1B type backfield between Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. The coaching staff loves Kenneth Walker. They had a game plan in place for him, resting him in preseason. They want him healthy for a full 17-game season, and alternating with Charbonnet is the best way to do that. Doesn't matter how talented Charbonnet is, Walker will still continue to get touches. Vice versa. Doesn't matter how talented Walker is, Charbonnet will still get touches. The Washington Commanders are dealing with a quarterback injury. Jaden Daniels has a knee sprain. His status is in doubt. This is a long season, so don't be surprised if they rest him this week against the Las Vegas Raiders. Marcus Mariota would be the starter at that point. For Mariota, last year he essentially played 2 games for the Commanders. One was a garbage time fill-in against the Panthers and then resting your starters in Week 18. And in those games, he averaged 183 yards passing, 45 yards rushing, completed 80.5% of his passes, averaged 2 touchdowns a game, 0 interceptions. I think the Commanders are going to be fine if they start Mariota this week. Other news for the Commanders, they signed Chase Edmonds to the practice squad, running back veteran, after Austin Eckler tore his Achilles. It seemed like a little bit of an overreaction when the Detroit Lions lost to the Green Bay Packers in Week 1, because in Week 2, they dominated in that game against the Chicago Bears. 500 total yards of offense, 7 total touchdowns, 5 of those coming from Jared Goff. Couple things that we can take away from this. 1, the Packers defense is really freaking good. If you stopped that offense that showed up in Week 2 for the Lions, in Week 1 you shut them down. And 2, this offense may not be as creative as Ben Johnson, but you cannot overlook the talent that's on that Lions offense. The Arizona Cardinals offense still hasn't gotten that chemistry between Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison in sync. This is a direct quote from Jonathan Gannon talking about the lack of targets for Marvin Harrison in Week 2. I never really look at targets as what needs to happen. The ball is going to go where the ball is going. With that said, I know he needs to touch the football for our offense to be at its premium. So far in 19 games in his NFL career with Marvin Harrison, 3.6 receptions, and 51.7 yards per game. It seems like whenever Marvin Harrison has a good game, they force him to have a good game. Now on to the top 10 in our power rankings. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to be without their franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. Jake Browning is going to be starting the majority of the season. Burrow is going to be missing up to 3 months with a turf toe injury, and at that point, if they're not in playoff contention anymore, he could miss the entirety of the season. The Bengals should be okay with Jake Browning. When he started in 2023, in 7 games, he was 4-3 as a starter, 1,800 yards passing, 11 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, also had 3 rushing touchdowns and completed 70% of his passes. For the weapons, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, with Jake Browning as a starter, he averaged 5 catches and 64 yards per game, while T. Higgins, 3 catches and 66 yards per game. With our other quarterbacks, Mike White and Sean Clifford have been signed to the practice squad, and Brett Rypien will be activated from the practice squad to the active roster. The Los Angeles Chargers, they look great. They're 2-0. However, the run game could be a little bit better. They're 4th in the NFL in passing, but rushing to 25th. Only 171 yards on the season, and 63 of those yards come from Justin Herbert. Amari Hampton, 15 carries in Week 1, but went down to 8 in Week 2. A lot of that has to do with the injury of Najee Harris as he recovers. In Week 1 for Najee Harris, only 1 carry, and in Week 2, 8 carries. Maybe a little bit of this has to do with Rashawn Slater, the season-ending injury that he suffered. The run game's going to suffer as well. But as the season progresses, you should see Amari Hampton be a little bit more productive, get a little bit more touches as well. This will truly be a 1-2 punch tandem that'll be similar to what Arizona is doing with James Conner and Trey Benson. Some injury news for them for their linebacking core. Their defense takes a big hit with Denzel Perryman suffering a high ankle sprain. He's officially being placed on injured reserve. He's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. And then Khalil Mack, who suffered an elbow injury against the Raiders, will be missing a few weeks. The San Francisco 49ers being 2-0 with Mac Jones throwing 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. That shows that the quarterback position, although important for the 49ers, they can still win games regardless of who's playing. That's not me knocking on Brock Purdy at all. I don't believe he's a game manager. I think he's a very good player. He's a game-changing quarterback. But I think the success of the 49ers is more predicated on whether Christian McCaffrey plays or he doesn't. In the 9 games that CMC missed with the 49ers, they were 4-5, only winning 44% of their games. In the 37 games that Christian McCaffrey has played with the 49ers, they are 27-10. 73% of the time, they're winning. So Purdy, as of right now, is day-to-day, could be returning this week, could be returning next. However, I don't feel like the 49ers are in a big rush to get him back with the production that they saw at Mac Jones. The Los Angeles Rams, the news for them, Ahkello Witherspoon, cornerback, has been placed on injured reserve. He suffered a broken clavicle. Kobe Durant is in line to get starting reps now. The Rams defense overall has looked pretty good. Now, in week 1, they did play the Houston Texans, who have their own offensive line issues, and the Tennessee Titans as well, which we don't expect them to be this big offensive juggernaut. They have their biggest test this week in week 3 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's see how they perform. The backfield for the Los Angeles Rams, this is what Sean McVay had to say about it between Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. He says, I think what you're looking for is something around a 65-35 ratio for those guys. I think you want Kyren playing about 2/3 of the time and Blake playing about 1/3. Les Snead, the general manager, has said this for the last 2 seasons. He has said that I do not want Kyren Williams to get 85-90% of the offensive snaps. I want it to be more 65-35, and it seems like this is becoming true in 2025. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers focusing in on their defense. Kalijah Kancey tore his pectoral. He is out for the season, unfortunately. They have a top 5 run defense. They only give up about 3.3 yards per attempt. Greg Gaines, who I would say is more of a nose tackle, could be utilized as a defensive end in a 3-4 defense. He should be getting more run with Kansas injury, as well as the 5th-round rookie Elijah Roberts. To the top 5 teams in our power rankings, the Indianapolis Colts. They are the first team to not punt in their first 2 games in the Super Bowl era. Now, they did have 2 turnovers on downs, 2 4th downs that they did not convert, but Rigoberto Sanchez has not hit the field to punt in a regular season game. They are also the first team to score on their first 10 possessions to start the season. They are making NFL history. They have started 2-0 for the first time since 2009. In the NFL, the mentality is if you have 1 good game, it's a fluke. If you have 2 good games in a row, okay, we're starting to pay attention. If you have 3 good games in a row, you're the real deal. And this week, they play the Tennessee Titans. The Green Bay Packers defense ultimately makes them one of the best 4 teams in the NFL. No matter what your rank is, between the Eagles, the Ravens, the Bills, the Packers should be in that conversation. The addition of Micah Parsons has changed the identity of that team. That entire defensive line is filled with nothing but first-rounders. Devontae Wyatt, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, and obviously Micah Parsons. To the Baltimore Ravens, going to our top 3 teams in our power rankings, Kyle Van Noy suffered a hamstring injury. He's going to be out for multiple games. Mike Green, their 2nd-round rookie, who essentially could have been a 1st-round pick, he's going to be filling in as a starter in that Sam linebacker spot. DeAndre Hopkins has emerged as a reliable threat in the Baltimore Ravens offense. Now, he doesn't get a lot of targets or a lot of catches, but when he does, he is productive. He's had 4 catches so far this season, 2 of them being touchdowns, almost had a 3rd. He's averaging 24.8 yards per reception. He's the best one-on-one receiver that they have on that team. So he's being utilized in those jump ball deep threat scenarios to stretch the field, while Zay Flowers is more of the route runner, chain mover kind of receiver. For the Buffalo Bills, the Bills defense in week 1 did not have a good game against the Ravens. In week 2, they were incredible against the Jets. So they seem like they're middle of the pack, where if they face a good offense, they're going to struggle. If they face a struggling offense, they're going to have a good game. This great defensive performance that they had against the Jets was without Ed Oliver, who, confirmed by Sean McDermott, along with Matt Milano, will be set to miss this game on Thursday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. The Philadelphia Eagles, how are they 2-0 with the offense that they have? Well, 1, their defense has really stepped up, especially the rookie Andrew Mukuba, who is a great fill-in for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Offensively, they're continuing to feed into the same thing that won them a Super Bowl last season, and that's the run game. They're 7th in the NFL in rushing total, 2nd in rushing touchdowns. Their passing offense, however, is taking a big hit. It's not the best. They are ranked 31st in the NFL, just ahead of one team, the Tennessee Titans. In a typical season for Jalen Hurts under Nick Sirianni, he finishes with about 480, 490 passing attempts. So far through 2 games, he's on pace to put up only 383 passing attempts. Now, it's only been 2 games, so this could be an outlier. It's a small sample size. But if it's not broken, don't fix it. If they're 2-0, they continue to win games, relying on good defense and the run game. Sure, they can improve in the passing game, but don't expect anything drastic. And that's it, covering 32 teams in one video. If you guys are a fan of this video, leave a comment down below, hit that like button, and also hit that subscribe button as well so you can stay up to date when we come out with a deep dive every week. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next week.